Even though this panel is called Digital Parenting, Finding Balance in a Connected World, I like to think about it as our parent support group. After listening to everything that we just did about kids and phones and AI in the future, I just feel like we all need a collective hug. So that's my goal for us talking today. Thank you again for joining. We are talking a little bit about how much, and we know how much technology has changed over the years, especially with social media, AI, et cetera, mental health. And while there's a lot of ongoing research, and Common Sense is, we're very proud to be involved in so much of the research and legislative actions, parents are really at the center of managing all of this on a day-to-day basis. We are all on the front lines. We all collectively up here are parents. And we are all always striving for balance and trying in all of our roles in our individual organizations to provide advice and oversight to parents as well, trying to find that balance. So again, even though we have talked so much about kids, this conversation is about the parents. What about the parents? We need to help and support too. So we're going to get started. Dr. Kollins, I would love to start with you and talk a little bit about some ongoing research that you're involved in right now and about studying and exploring kids' online habits and trends. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, it's great to be here. Thank you, Jill. I can't even see in the audience because the lights are so bright. But anyway, I'm Scott Kollins. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Aura, and we build tools to help parents navigate this complicated digital world that Jill was just talking about. As part of our mission to develop products that are really evidence-based and science-backed, we've been gathering data in a couple of different ways. So first of all, a couple months ago, we launched a national prospective study to gather information about what kids are doing on their devices, how much time they're spending on it, what they're doing on social media, et cetera. And we're going to be linking those data to mental health outcomes, as well as other social and some outcomes related to sleep and physical activity. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have a lot of really good information to share back out on that. But the second source of information or data that we're gathering is we've had a beta product out since about last summer that allows us, again, to get a lot of information about kids' device habits. Actually, today, very serendipitously, we're launching a whole bunch of new features within that product. But we are able to take all that information and derive insights from it about just what's the current state of play for how kids are using their devices. So through both of those, we get information that, number one, we can sort of communicate back out to the public and to the academic community to understand this challenge a little bit better. But it also helps us as a company inform the tools that we're building.
Do you want to back up a little and share a little bit about Aura and what the company is and does?
Yeah, sure. So Aura has been around for about seven or 8 years. Historically, was founded as a company to focus on digital security, but mostly digital security relating to adult challenges, identity protection, financial transaction monitoring. And a few years ago, through a few different events, Aura started getting really interested in family safety and family digital safety, and that was the start of. Initially there was some tools that Aura started developing. They were kind of traditional parental control tools, allowing you to set limits, time limits on device usage in kids, or do some content filtering. That has now grown to be a lot more sort of nuanced, and that's related to some of the features that we're launching today. I joined the company about 10 months ago as part of the commitment to really build out these kinds of features. Right, I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I've got a background in academic research. So really making sure that the tools we're building are sort of medically and scientifically backed and informed, as well as all the ongoing research that we're doing as part of this that I just described.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Grace, I will date myself and say that I used Parents Magazine when I was earlier days with my daughters, but I think you guys have done a great job evolving the platform along with all the parenting needs over the years. So can you tell us a little bit about what kind of parenting challenges you're hearing the most about?
Well, it's always nice to meet a reader in real life.
Still a fan.
Still a fan. Keep reading, because life gets more complicated for parents. So I've been with the brand for 10 years, and Parents is actually turning 100 next year. So we are still out there guiding parents, especially, and really focusing more and more on those tween and teen years. It used to be that in the very beginning, people would come to us for advice about their babies and toddlers when, how do I do this? But we have really seen a lot of growth when it comes to these other age ranges, so tweens and teens, and even into those college years. And I can tell you that parents are struggling. They're really struggling to find that balance between giving their kids a device or social media and keeping them safe online. And they are constantly second guessing themselves. I mean, we were having a conversation before this panel started about what we're doing in our own home. So am I being too strict? Am I being too lenient? What do I do? So there's a lot of mental gymnastics, and frankly, it's overwhelming. So not only mentally, but emotionally, to try to keep up with our children's digital lives on so many different platforms. And, something as seemingly simple as monitoring texts, which parents do find icky for the most part, but they see it as a necessity, gets more complicated as more and more kids communicate in different apps. So a lot of this unpaid digital work happens at night when the kids are in bed, and these bleary-eyed parents put off going to sleep themselves to do some of this sleuthing. And it takes time and energy when parents already feel at capacity, and even when they come up with some sort of routine for doing all this behind the scenes work, things change. The technology is changing. So they feel like they're constantly behind what they need to be doing to keep their kids safe.
This is why this is a parent support group, because we're just all
group
beating
hug.
each other. Yeah, exactly. Sam, so fun fact, when I was your age, I sat on one of these panels, but the topic was not phones. It was The Wonder Years, which was a show that was really popular when we were growing up. And I had to answer questions from a room full of teachers and parents who were asking whether or not The Wonder Years, why it resonated so much with kids today. So in so many ways, I feel like this is just a moment that I'm just going to pause on. But also, I feel for you, because I think there's always this kind of like angst from a teenager who feels like, shouldn't the adults know better? But we don't. I mean, you're hearing it right here. Like we're watching all this and living it alongside you guys. So tell us a little bit about you. You just recently got a phone in December 2024. You wrote an essay in order to secure that phone. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, the whole deal was like I had to write 5 paragraphs, I think, on the pros of me getting a phone and the cons of me getting a phone. Now, personally, I absolutely hate essays. Like, I will literally do anything. So I'm pretty sure they offered me it in
February,
and I didn't get it till last December because I don't like essays.
A little bit of procrastination, never hurt anyone. Go on. What were some of the points in your essay?
Some of the points in my essays were a lot of the pros were like the communication would be enhanced because I literally had no way of communicating with anyone before a phone. Just because I'm homeschooled, not to make homeschooling sound bad, it's absolutely wonderful. I don't have to get up at 6:30. I can get up at 9:30 and still do school and still look good. But I don't want to say that I didn't have any communication with the outside world, but in the same thought, I really didn't have any communication with the outside world. So once I got a phone, it definitely changed things.
And what was one of the cons that you had put into your essay?
A couple of the cons? Well, I hear enough news to know that social media isn't completely bad, but there's definitely a dark side. There's a dark side to almost everything in the world.
How do you think it's going so far?
So
Having
far,
a phone.
the phone. So far, it's going good. It could be going better because social media, YouTube, games, it's all just right there. It's easy to just boop.
Rebecca, what were some of your, first of all, well done. Like, none of us, I don't think Grace and I have handed out that as parenting advice on either of our platforms. So we might incorporate that. But how do you think it's going, and what really led you to this decision of making that final, like, yes, we're going to go down this road?
Yeah, so when it comes to deciding for a phone for kids, I felt, as Grace has shared what it feels like for parents, very overwhelmed. It's like the wild, wild west, and you never know what's coming next. And so I, on my own, decided to just looking for resources. I needed to start looking to see, what is this going to open? Like, he's my oldest, I have two more. What is that going to open us up to as a family? What are the risks here? And when I started seeing a lot of studies of what's going on, I have to say my biggest fears and what held me off a bit more was the exposure to pornography, the exposure to cyberbullying when it comes to social media, and then that constant consumerism where you're just scrolling. And truthfully, when I think of brain development in children, how is this, like, seeking a dopamine fix from scrolling going to affect my child's growing brain at only 14? And at this point, he was 13 when we had the conversation, and I think it worked to our benefit how much he hates essays. But in that, when I was finding it, I thought, okay, he's mature enough, he feels, to have a phone. Then he's mature enough to see what it's going to bring into his world too, how it's going to affect him. And that's when we decided 2 papers. We want ones of, what are you finding that's not good about phones? What are you going to run into, not only to prepare himself, but to really see what he was getting into. And then the second essay was actually to persuade us. He had to, okay, now that I know these factors, this is why I should still get a phone. And so I would say that that's what really led us to delaying until 14. And we've even agreed, his father and I, that it might not look the same for the other 2 kids, but we definitely want to delay and wait until we stick a phone in their hands permanently.
I love that you're touching on that it might not look the same for the other 2 kids, because I think that's an important factor for all parents. And we just talked about that even prior to this. A few of us, maybe me, made the mistake of getting one for my older daughter at too young of an age, and now my younger daughter is, in my opinion, benefiting. But I think in her words, she would say she's suffering from my older daughter's mistakes, or my mistake getting her that phone. So you really have to develop, like, a plan of action for each individualized kid. How do you think it's going so far?
Well, so far it's only been 4 or 5 months. We have had a 2-week break in there. I think we're looking at the intrusiveness of constantly having a text message, and how you feel like you have to respond immediately to these people reaching out to you, and what it looks like safeguarding and setting safe boundaries, even with friends. I mean, I wish someone at 14 would have talked to me about setting safe boundaries, so I knew it, when I was older and getting into relationships. And so even faced with that, it's been a short time, but we've dealt with friends with suicidal ideation, friends who share content that we don't want shared, and then just really, how do we navigate this? And so Samuel, reluctantly at first, when we had the rest period, we'll call it was a bit of a reset. We even pointed out to him, and I know he doesn't mind me sharing, all of a sudden he was like singing while he was doing his chores again, and he didn't have his phone in his hand. Or I'd call him up to do something and he'd answer on the first call. And those were things we didn't realize. Yeah.
Hold on.
Definitely applause. I mean, he's 14, right? But those were things we didn't realize we were missing, or even just sitting together to watch a movie and, face in your phone feeling like, oh, my friend texted me, I have to respond. And so it's definitely helped us, even as grownups with fully formed brains, thinking about how we are using our phones and role modeling that to our children. So yeah, it's been very holistic for us, I think. And I'm hopeful looking forward, even with just the things we've learned so far.
That's great. It's great to hear your analysis too about the experience so far, because I think, again, there's a lot of parents, and Grace already spoke to this, that are just kind of doing this homework really quickly and feel pressured to make a decision. And I think one of the things that we always come back to is like, you can wait, you can hold off, you can educate yourself before you move ahead. Dr. Kollins, do you find, like, hearing what you're hearing from Sam and Rebecca's experiences, is this being echoed in the research space for you?
Yes, not the.
Or are these the anomaly that I think they are?
Not the level of thoughtfulness from both of you guys. Seriously, that I'm very impressed, and we could all learn an awful lot from both of your approach to that. But yeah, this is what we know. I mean, we know that kids are spending an enormous amount of time online. Our data suggests that kids are spending as much as 25%, 3 months of a year on their devices. But it's to the point that you made about, like, taking the break, Rebecca. Kids are also how sort of entrenched this is. We have data from our users back in January, when there was a brief ban on TikTok for a day, and we were able to go back and take a look at the data, and what we saw. Yeah, TikTok usage went down, but not at the expense of everything else. Instagram usage surged by like 170% in that one day. So, if you can't get your fix with TikTok, you're going to go to another platform. So yeah, I think it's quite consistent. We have another scientific paper that's under review now, where we looked at device usage during school hours. Because we're able to know what time of day kids are on, and kids are spending hour plus a day on social media apps during school hours. So this is happening. It's ubiquitous. It's a thing, and I think what Rebecca and Sam have talked about in terms of trying to approach it more responsibly and thoughtfully. The phones aren't going away. I don't think we're going to be successful in doing sort of blanket changes, bans, and things like that. We've got to learn how to navigate and manage things more effectively, assuming that everybody's going to have them.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think we're seeing a massive shift, right? Not just that kids have devices, but how they're using the devices, yep. Back to what you had just pointed out. So more gaming, more short-time videos, less traditional watching of TV. We know that YouTube is the number one platform for kids. We just released our census around 0 to 8. We know that 40% of kids have a tablet before the age of 2, or by the age of 2, rather. Nearly 1 in 4 have their own phone by 8, which I think is a stat we also heard earlier today. So it's permeating their childhood and navigating it. And, we say balance, manage, navigate. Those are all those are our life preserver words that we're just clinging on to, making sure that we're still able to raise our kids in a way that gives them this freedom to not be bound to a phone. I'm interested to know, does Sam have social media?
He does not.
Okay.
No, he's not, at least as far as I know, too interested.
As far as she knows. Okay, we'll talk later.
Again, the outliers.
Right, exactly. How do you feel, Scott? I'm interested to start with you in the way that this quality of screen time has changed so much, how the platforms are changing, and again, not just the why, but the how everyone's consuming content.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I remember years ago, I was working on an academic paper focused on screen time, and how my background is in studying ADHD and how screen time is associated with ADHD and whether it causes it and so forth. And this was 10 years ago, and we started looking at this, and we realized, like, all of the previous research that's been done was all focused on television watching. And even then it was completely irrelevant. And I think that's what we're seeing now is we're seeing this like dramatic change. And it's not like it's all changed and now it's going to be static from now on. We're seeing changes in just the types of, the ways that kids are interacting and adults are interacting with these devices. One of the more recent ones, again, with our data that we've been looking at is the extent to which kids are engaged with AI based products, apps and chatbots and things like this. And it's pretty striking. I mean, the majority of kids from age 10 on are engaged with these kinds of products. They're often using them in ways that are clearly not appropriate for certain age ranges. And those kinds of products are also changing, and they're going to continue to change. If you'd have asked me that question 6 months ago, I might not have said anything about kids' usage of AI chatbots, but that's, so it's changing. So I think that's something we have to keep a close eye on and think about. But again, as parents, like thinking about how do we best keep our finger on that pulse of what's happening with the types of content is really, really important. It's going to keep us a step ahead of things.
Grace, are you finding the same in your community, in your audience?
So we at Parents have really had to shift with the times. It used to be that we were very staunch about screen time limits. Yes, there was a certain amount of time that you could spend on a device or watch TV. And we know that it's not one size fits all when it comes to different families or different kids, as you said, Rebecca. And we want to empower our readers to do what works best for their families. And while the menu of what kids are watching has certainly changed, parents are aware that screens are not going anywhere. They are really just concerned that what their kids are watching, the content that they're consuming, be more constructive rather than destructive, meaning that they want their kids to get something out of it. They want the content to promote learning, to stretch their imagination, to foster creativity. But we also know that's not really always possible, unfortunately. So we are very adamant about recommending parents create consistent limits that fit their family's needs, but those limits of how and when their child can be using a device. And also we recommend having conversations with your child by co-viewing, co-playing, so that you understand how they're using their screens, what they're watching, and you can create those ongoing, regular conversations with them. And I really think that the goal is that you want your child to come to you first if they have any concerns now or in the future. So really having those regular conversations, which I'm very curious from Rebecca how that happens in her household, because I love the idea of this essay, but how do you keep that same kind of
Keep the momentum.
Yes, I like the word momentum. Yeah. Does he write regular essays?
No.
Should we start assigning the essays we want our kids to write to Sam?
Yes.
Okay.
I will say to keep it going, it's a constant conversation. It has to be. You had said it feels cringy to go through your child's text messages. Yes, it absolutely does. But we found ourselves in a situation where we were very thankful that we did, because it prevented further harm with parental intervention. And then we were able to speak of things like, what is a red flag you should look for when talking to children? And when this language is used, specifically things like self-harm or things like that, when do you get your parent involved? And I'm thankful he's not in the school system, so he doesn't have that social community of don't tell your parents. Although I'm sure he does a little bit, but there's this like bully syndrome, like if you say something, it's going to be worse for you. He doesn't experience that as much at home. So to kind of build that foundation. And yeah, when he's older, I want him to think like, I can go to my mom with this, or I can go to my dad and they can help me. And so I try to stay relevant in the news when it comes to social media, tech use in children. And then I bring up the uncomfortable, icky topics. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be weird, but it's something we need to talk about. And that's really what to try and just stay proactive, because I feel like the minute I stop, I'm going to be decades behind.
Sam, I'm sure those conversations are great for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of content you watch most on your phone?
Content I watch most comes from YouTube. As she said previously, I have no social media. That is also her choice and not entirely my choice, but I also know that I don't need it, because currently I have text message and YouTube for that's considered social media-ish. That's all I need, because anything from TikTok I can probably get on YouTube if I want. And
Fair.
Using TikTok, you can talk to people. Through messages, you can talk to people. I honestly don't see a point to platforms like Instagram and TikTok.
Is there anything in particular that you are clamoring for?
Not particularly, no.
What other kind of stuff what's just interesting to you to watch on YouTube, or is you just kind of scroll?
On YouTube, mainly I watch a lot of Rocket League clips, because I'm terrible at the game and slowly getting better.
What game? I'm sorry.
Rocket League.
Okay.
Car
Got it.
soccer.
Car soccer.
Car soccer.
I'm a mom of girls. I think I missed this boat. Go on.
And also random calisthenics workouts, because I don't see the point of a gym when you can just do it at home.
Again, the outlier. I mean, really interesting. I when you were talking about, keeping the screens out of your kid's bedroom and how that just feels like, I wish for those days. But we have a TV that we kind of move around the house, and I'll put it in my daughter's rooms when they have sleepovers. And one time we left it in there, and my husband walked by and he's like, "Get that huge TV out of Olivia's room." And I was like, "No way, leave it in there," because I could finally see what she's watching again. It was so nice to be able to go in there and say, "Turn that off," because I knew what she was doing, or watch something with her, as opposed to that privacy that, it's more like a wall. It doesn't feel like, oh, you're invading their privacy. It feels like they're just blocking you out, I think, when they're behind that screen. So I kind of miss those TV days a little bit, I have to say. What has been, Rebecca, for you, one of the more challenging pieces of having Sam on a phone?
I would say when it comes to usage, the battle of recognizing what's enough time and when it's time to park it, which we do regularly. And then also just trying to respect his space with it, but also keep recognizing I wouldn't just give him a motorbike and say, go at it. I'm going to say, you don't drive into oncoming traffic. You wear a helmet. You take a safety course, whatever. It's the same thing. This little computer in his hand can connect him to things that I literally can't even imagine, because I see daily when I am looking up research, things I would have never imagined. And so I feel like the hardest part is keeping up and keeping those safeguards at the forefront all of the time.
What I think is so admirable and something that parents can replicate in what you're doing is keeping him engaged in the conversation about this. It's not just setting rules and walking away, and you include him in the conversation. It's a family discussion, and I think that's something that is really hard. It's actually harder than you make it sound, but I'm very inspired by the way that you're doing this. But it's an excellent way to try and engage with kids and make them part of the solution. Grace, speaking of parenting advice, and I really want everyone to think about any questions that you might have, because we're coming for you. And we're gonna put all these guys on the spot with their parenting advice. So if there's any parent questions around digital media or anything else for that matter, we're going to draw the line at what to make for dinner, but we're happy to answer questions around.
I think that's an easier question.
Yeah, I know, that's true. But I'm coming back to you. We were talking a little bit about how parents really just want this hard and fast rule. They just want to know how much is okay and when is it okay. Can you talk a little bit about that in your own experience, for either as a parent or with Parents Magazine?
So in terms of what the magical age is or when the right time to do something, it really, really just depends on you and your family. I do my own thing at home. My children don't have phones, and I'm been branded as a very strict mom, but that works for me. But really, what works for you in your house, your children's, how mature they are, how they handle other responsibilities, the conversations you have with them, the comprehension that they have. It really depends on that child. And again, each child is an individual. I know I have 2 children and they're very different people. So really keeping that in mind, and then what works for your family. And I think using your own experience and having a bit of confidence in what that is versus thinking about what, your friend is doing or this other school parent is doing, that cannot be what you're using to make decisions, because the repercussions and whatever happens are going to be with you. So you really have to think about your own family's life and how to make the best decision for them. And, unfortunately, not everybody, Rebecca's reading research papers. Goodness, Rebecca, good for you. But it is amazing, but it's difficult. It's difficult to find that time and that energy that it takes to really just monitor everything. So you really want to think before doing this. And once you decide that this is a good plan for your family, again, having that clear communication with your child, setting those limits so that this doesn't interfere with sleep, playtime, and other activities that are so important for a child's development. So having those really, really clear conversations that are ongoing with your child, and then maybe signing a contract, or there's so many different things that you can do to keep your child, I'm not going to say on their toes, but really just keep them, give them that agency that they so want, but also make them accountable for what they're doing. And kids understand more than we sometimes give them credit for. So really just telling them why you decided to give them this device or not, and just being very clear and consistent about that.
Thank you. And for parents that kind of feel, Dr. Kollins, like they need a little bit of extra support, like we need a little bit of parental controls, but I also want to talk to my kids about this process. Can you say a little bit about how parents might strike that balance and maybe some of the benefits of the walled garden experience for kids?
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot running through my brain right now. I want to riff first on something you were just saying, Grace, about kids being every kid is different, right? That's sort of obvious, but I think it's important to also recognize that extends to the ways in which digital life is going to impact those kids. So the ways that kids are going to sort of react to or be influenced by certain things through their device usage or social media usage is going to vary. We've got we have data from our users that I was talking about before. Different clusters of kids emerge if you look at how they're interacting with social media. So you can have 2 different types of kids spend the exact same amount of time on social media, whereas one spends most of that engaged in sending messages and interacting, and the other is completely passive and just scrolling through. The way you're going to think about and manage those 2 different profiles or kids is going to be different. But I think going back to your question, Jill, sort of one of our kind of guiding principles as we think about building tools to help parents is we don't want to just impose controls. So we think about connection instead of just control, and part of that is through the device itself and understanding, like we've been talking about, what your kids are doing and how they're engaging. But a huge part of that is outside the device and just making sure that you do have that connection, and that Rebecca and Sam have talked about they're actively engaged in communicating, and even though they may be outliers, it is a really, really good example to set. And I think encouraging parents to just ask questions and be curious. It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, for we were talking a little bit about before the panel, for those of us where, the emergence of this kind of technology came well into our adult lives. So we weren't even like weaned into it in our 20s, but it's like, boom, all of a sudden it's here. It's really hard and it can be really overwhelming to you. And we've talked about that before too, Grace. So I think that just facilitating those conversations with the kids, that's where we start.
It's really helpful. Rebecca, I'm curious, are there any guidelines that you put in place, even though it's only been a few months, that you've already had to adjust a little bit based on you had a vision of how it was going to be and then you put it to test in the real world, and what has had to be adjusted?
Adjustments we've made has been actually less time on the phone and limiting the spaces in which he goes on the phone. We had initially said, don't take it in your room, stay with us when it's on, and you're for sure going to have it charging and done by 10 p.m. Because we homeschool, our days are a bit later, and I want to give him that freedom. But yeah, coming back to it, it definitely starts on it later in the day and ends on it earlier now, and shared spaces. We don't want it in the bathroom. We don't want it in the bedroom. And even though we use Aura, and so Aura allows us to have a lot of safeguards, kids are smart. And honestly, sometimes speak a language that I can't even understand. And so to have the actions and what's going on in front of us constantly helps us to keep both eyes focused on what's going on for both of us, and to keep the accountability. He wants this privilege and freedom. Well, then he's going to have to be accountable when using it.
Are there any safeguards, like any rules that your parents have that you feel like need to be let go? Or you're angling for? Like you need more of something. Now's your chance to make your case.
Honestly, no. Because I'm 14 years old, turning 15 in 2 weeks, I think. 2 weeks. And I'll admit, I wouldn't mind spending 8 hours on YouTube, but I don't need to. There's no reason to. So I don't need a bunch of hours on this. I don't need access to social media because I don't need social media.
Wow. Okay. It's really impressive. I want to turn this to the audience and see if anybody has any questions that they wanted to ask. I'd like to tell you I'd call on you, but I can't see any of you. So I don't know if I see one hand over there. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So I have a newly minted 14-year-old.
Yes.
The second to last out of
I'm coming out.
100% middle school to get a phone. So as I embark on this journey, I've seen sort of everything from trust them and be there when they fail to like the super strict contract, 9 p.m. charging in the kitchen.
Still need to
right?
go out,
So
and you're telling
just
me.
based on your own experience and what you've seen, maybe from readers or research or as a mom,
So
We're doing
just
Q&A.
curious,
okay.
what you recommend along that spectrum of how strict to be on those guidelines because they are so young and don't necessarily know what they should or shouldn't do, to hey, they're going to go to college one day or they're not going to be home and I'm not going to be able to monitor them. Just curious if you have recommendations for parents along that.
Go.
All right, I'll start, and I'll let Grace can bring it home. I think that first of all, I think I'd love to know who the last kid in the class was. Maybe talk to that parent and bond. But my suggestion would be to have, again, getting back to this connection, have the conversation with your kid about which dimensions of monitoring or control are most important. Is it overall time limit? Is it the content that they're exposed to? Is it sort of a mishmash of both? Because I think the way that you approach that is going to be, it's going to depend. If it's just, you trust them, that they're not, you have trust in them that the content they're going to view is going to be, or engage with, is going to be okay, then maybe it's something as simple as a time limit or a rule around putting the device somewhere away for the night or something like that. If it's a lot more, hey, I want to make sure you're not exposed to X, Y, or Z, then there might be other things that you could do. So I think it depends on what what's most important to what the kid wants, as well as what you guys think are most important. Because, again, it's a wishy-washy answer, but it's gonna depend on, each kid's individual case.
It is a little wishy-washy. No. Yes, completely. It depends on your family. I don't think there's going to be a clear answer and we're going to give you all the answers. But I do think there's a lot of value in also being more of a mentor than somebody who restricts. So putting away your phone when you're spending quality time with your child, taking screen breaks. Because many times what I find is, we as parents are the ones kind of scrolling and, checking our emails and doing all those things. So if we can shift gears to model these healthy digital habits, I think it benefits everyone. So really, even just talking about how you're feeling when you're on your phone, like, oh boy, I've been on this thing for 30 minutes now, the algorithm, let me put this down. Just narrating, I think, does a lot for kids because they are constantly watching and absorbing so much information from you and modeling themselves after you. So I think there's a lot to be said for you kind of charting that course a little bit.
Yeah, I will add that's so important to talk about the modeling aspect of it and what. It's important as we talk about being good parents and monitoring this. Take a good look in the mirror and make sure that the habits and the behaviors that we're modeling are good. Because I can tell you that justifying to your child of why you pull out your device at the dinner table because it's really important because it's work, or I need to add something to the grocery list, so that doesn't register with them about well, then why can't I be on TikTok? That's just as important to me. So I think that setting those boundaries yourself can be really, really powerful.
Could you just repeat that? Because I'm going to put my husband on speaker and I want him to hear what you just said.
Well, I'm not going to throw my wife under the bus, but actually I am, because it's actually we have this we have a dinner table rule. It's like screen-free zone around the dinner table. First of all, it is. It's worked wonders in terms of just engagement and discussion around the dinner table. But my wife is the worst about, I needed to do X, Y, Z. It's like, nope. And the kids pick up on mine are 14 and 12 and they're like, Mom, nope, put it away.
Yes, there's one a few rows back. Oh, sure. You go ahead.
Sorry,
I'll let you guys pick.
Okay, I'll hand it to somebody next. Hi, I'm Claire Christensen from SRI Education. We've had a lot of discussion in this session about limits and monitoring and boundaries, but I feel like the flip side, the balance, is helping parents and kids find that nurturing, growth-promoting content that's good for them at whatever age they're at. And I would just love to hear from anybody on this stage, any recommendations for what all of us can do to make that side of supporting media use a little easier for kids and families. Thanks.
I'll start. I'll just start with my reaction to that. I think it's a really important point, and it is important to keep in mind that even as we have this discussion, there's a little bit of an undertone that we're trying to wrestle with this big evil thing. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I think we should check our assumptions that I think the big evil thing is just the overall way that we interact with it, not just the potential benefits and the content. So I think it's a really good point. I think my thought is that if you have, you start those connections and those discussions, then some of this sort of more pro-social or positive aspects of engagement hopefully can emerge on their own, and that becomes sort of a discussion between kids and their parents.
I think it's more natural and expected. By the way, I love that question, wherever you are out there. It's more natural to talk about co-viewing with younger kids, but I've found that co-viewing with the tweens and teens is the sweet spot. Because let them drive, let them show you all the fun silly stuff that they're watching on YouTube, or if they're on TikTok or whatever it is. I mean, you might be able to like slide your views in every so often, but if you could just take 10 minutes and just watch with them, kind of get a sense of what they're enjoying about it, calisthenic videos, whatever the case may be. It's a good insight into their world instead of just coming in with boundaries and limits and no. So I think a lot of what we're talking about is overall the device itself and the challenges of just sucking all your time into one device. But I think there is actually a lot of fantastic content out there, and shameless plug for Common Sense because we review most of it. But I do think that it's a great thing to share with your kids or teens. So I would start there.
And it also puts you in a place of wanting to understand, which I think it's a really great approach if you want to create those conversations, come from a place of, oh, let me have a look. Let's watch together and what happens here. And kids pick up on that, right? They see it as an invitation to talk more, to share more, rather than to hide whatever they're watching because you may not understand.
Exactly. And sorry.
There you go.
I'm Beppy. I am a parent of 4 kids, a grandparent of 8 children, and once a mom, always a mom. And I was a communication major at Stanford, and so this is all fascinating to me. And what I think is a really good point, and I want to flip it on its head since this is a support group for parents, okay?
Welcome.
Grandparents. Turn to your folks. And I'm witnessing, my husband and I are witnessing, each one of our children as parents is making decisions on this topic differently. So then navigating those waters as a grandparent, oh, they're doing this, we never compare, we try not to compare, we sure do on the car ride home, but so I guess the question really is, I am probably one of the few grandparents on an app called CoverStar. Have you guys heard of it? With my 9-year-old granddaughter. And because my daughter said, Mom, I just don't have time, to go on all this stuff. But this is kind of an alternative to a TikTok, and she does not have a phone. She's 9. However, I said, sure, I'll join CoverStar. And so we do these fun little dances and stuff, and some of her friends follow me and what have you. But anyway, I think that some of the points that you guys were making as far as that open screen, that television in the room, I don't envy you guys at all because of that wall that you're describing. So getting engaged as best as possible, but also engage your parents as grandparents. We're not obsolete, and a lot of us really want to know what our grandchildren are doing, and it's fascinating. And to sit there and watch Fortnite, and wait a minute, he's got these 3 iPads going, and his friends are helping him strategize on how to play Fortnite. Who knew I would know what I was talking about? So I think that you should reach out to the next generation too.
Excellent point. Very impressive.
Your grandchildren are very lucky to have you in their lives.
Agree. And your kids, by the way.
We have another question here, back here.
That's okay. Go ahead.
With the microphone. Go ahead with the microphone.
Kim Carr with Digital for Good. First off, thank you for all your guys' great information. We have about 250 students who come to us to help more students and even parents now. So my question to you is, what do you think needs to be in a toolkit that's created by students? And then of course, Sam, what should your mom be making that has made you who you are, that made you the decisions of all these different things that you have?
Well, I'm not quite sure how to explain it, to be completely honest.
Can you repeat that part for Sam? What should his mom, what?
I think the big thing is, Sam, I think it's like, what did your mom do to make you have these thoughts that you have about social media, right? Was it the research? Was it the constant conversations that you had? Did she make you watch something, right? What was those different things?
What was her recipe for success?
Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to be building this toolkit for other parents, right? And I think even from you, Dr. Scott, is like, what toolkits should you be coming from that end, right? What from parenting, what pieces have you guys been seeing that has been successful to be able to keep building these toolkits that Emmy earlier, that student was saying, it's like, we need more toolkits. And the smaller we can, because there's so much information, we need bite-sized pieces.
I think one of the main things is that she wasn't afraid to show me the dark side of what social media can do. Like, I knew that people were committing suicide, that people were hurting themselves because of social media. I'm not sure. I mean, I know a lot of people, almost everyone does, but they might find out on their own. And I think it was just different for me that she kind of showed me that that is a thing, that there is a dark side to it.
Well, and I will say, speaking to the toolkit, which I think is a wonderful thing, it's really hard to find all that information and overwhelming. I mean, to say about bite-sized pieces, you're taking there's pages and pages of things out there that you can have access to. And so having it come to one space for parents is amazing. But yeah, we just try to keep open conversation. What he's curious about, let's talk about it before I just let you go out there into it. And that's been a really big factor for us. And it keeps, like you said about the shared viewing, it keeps us constantly relevant together so we understand what we're going through.
How old do you think Sam was when you started talking to him, since he's your oldest, about internet safety or phone safety or your concerns around it?
Well, I want to say when he was in the third grade, they put out that alarming statistic that children by third grade are being exposed to pornography. And so instantly I was just, as a parent, panicked. What do I do? And so just looking to resources, I know there's, we talked about sex early on, and we just talked about what that means at an age appropriate age for him. But also there's some resources called good pictures, bad pictures, things that are for kids to consume. But again, that constant conversation, he came home and he said, I got in trouble because my friend said the S word. And I was like, okay, because he was in grade school until the fourth grade. And I'm like, great, what's the S word? At home, it's safe, you can tell me. And he's like, sex. I was like, wait, we haven't even covered that. And so immediately I knew I want his information coming from me. There's a lot of misinformation, even with social media, and I want that information. And I like to stay on both sides of things so I can see what's going on holistically and then give him a whole picture to view that lens in. And that, I think, has been really helpful. I didn't decide necessarily for him, no social media ever, but he's come to that conclusion on his own as well.
We probably have time for one more question or two. I'm not going to pick.
Here, no one can hear you.
Thank you. And the dentist said, hey, your daughter has some pre-cavities. It's good to know. And now, we'll go home. We're going to be more vigorous with her brushing. But there's a very observable and evident measure of success, which is the cavities will stop progressing and hopefully her teeth will be better. I think one thing that's challenging about this topic is that there isn't that. I'm curious, maybe Dr. Kollins, but for any of you, if there is actually in the research, are there particular markers you look for when you think about the potential, injurious or pernicious aspects of overloading on phones, digital devices? What is that objective that we should be tracking, even if it's just a leading indicator, a North Star, and not actually the ultimate outcome we care about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll try not to geek out too much on, sort of the scientific side of this, but I think the short answer to that question is right now, today, we don't have those leading indicators specifically for, when device usage is going awry, other than to look at the things that we know, if we see emerging mental health kinds of issues. I think we can get to a point, to exactly to your point, where we can get a little bit more sort of early warning of, hey, things are starting to look negative here, or we're seeing trends in the way that a kid is interacting with their devices that might be cause for an intervention. So I think now we're and there's lots of research going on in this area, including some of the work that we're doing. We are trying to catch up to understand better how usage is impacting those kinds of outcomes. I think we'll get to a point where we can intervene earlier.
We'll do one last question.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for your vulnerability on this panel, especially in discussing how overwhelming and really challenging it is to be a parent with all of this technology. And it comes across to me as unfair that parents have to deal with all of these things. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on, we've talked about what you can do for your children, but what can tech companies be doing for your children? Like, what would you like to see from tech companies that would make your parenting easier?
If I can speak to that, I would say, if I could say something to tech companies, it's everything you're putting out there is affecting our children. Everything, negative, positively. And I am an Indigenous woman, and we have a belief that whatever you do today affects the next 7 generations. And so having that forethought, what are tech companies doing today to protect our kids, potentially my 5th great-grandchildren, from what's coming and what I heard up here today, maybe in the next 1 to 3 years, a whole new world I can't even imagine. And with that, we need more safeguards, and we need accessible information. The research that I did to get Sam his phone, and then himself having to do similar research, the information is overwhelming and sometimes above my head. I don't understand all of the jargon. So if tech companies are going to put out this really cool thing for kids, maybe resources for parents, how to talk to your kids about it, how it can be unsafe, and how you can safeguard them. Again, don't just throw them in a car without a license and expect them not to crash.
Excellent. Well said. I think it's a multi-pronged approach.
That's a mic drop answer.
It really is. And I know there's more to that response as well that we can share. But I just want to we are out of time. I want to thank everybody, Sam and Rebecca especially, just sharing all the insights from your own lives. It's incredibly valuable. You can hear how interested everybody is, for your continued work, Grace, and for your excellent work, Dr. Kollins. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening today.